Well, Kelley, do you want to kick things off by telling us a little bit about, your undergraduate experience, especially when you started to think about, going on for more education? Because if you're anything like I am, when you graduated from your bachelor's degree, you thought, okay, I'm ready for a break.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and good observation from my LinkedIn that it was pretty soon after my undergrad that I went for the MBA, and it was an interesting path there because at Whitewater, my undergrad, I studied international business. So I have a bachelor's of business in international business and also a bachelor of arts in Spanish. So I studied abroad for a semester in Spain and was just really engrossed in my Spanish degree too. So after I graduated, I got a job at Baird, where I am still now. But I was actually still considering continuing my education for Spanish for a while. So I thought that I was going to go back to Spain and do a master's of Spanish through St. Louis University in Madrid. They have a campus in Madrid, and was going to do a master's of Spanish there, and just that would have been a completely different path. I thought that I would maybe be a Spanish teacher or professor someday, but then things changed, and my husband ended up getting transferred to Sydney, Australia for his job. So we went, and I thought, well, I had already mentally committed to, I'd taken the GRE and I'd committed to doing something. So I thought I'll go back to Whitewater and do my MBA, because it was hard to get back into that mindset of, okay, I'm going to do school again. And I did have a job while in Australia as well. My husband's company got a work visa for me too, which was really nice. So I worked at a bank there, actually in analytics and information. So kind of applies to what Mackenzie's minor is. And so I did the Whitewater online MBA from Australia. So that was interesting because Australia is 16 hours ahead. It made some things tricky, but it was actually not too bad. It was usually, I would just have to get up earlier for like group projects, stuff like that. But I think that just shows too how the flexibility of Whitewater's MBA program, if it can be done from Australia, it can be done from anywhere. And I was drawn to it too because, pre-COVID, doing everything online was still kind of foreign. So I was nervous of, if I do something online, I thought it'd be nice because I at least knew a lot of the professors still from my undergrad at Whitewater. So it was nice to have a relationship with some people before just jumping in fully online. I wasn't sure how that was going to go, but it was great. And I was able to do, it was 36 credits, and I'm going into too much detail now, diving into some of the questions, but it was 36 credit program, and I did it in 18 months while working full time. So it's doable. It was a lot, but it was doable, and it was kind of, again, getting back into that school mentality. I thought, let's not drag this out. And it was, so I had usually 3 classes at a time, and maybe I should stop now before going on a tangent, since that was just supposed to be the intro. But I will mention, I decided to do an emphasis in international business for the MBA as well, which in hindsight, maybe I would have done something else since it was the same as my undergrad emphasis, but I enjoy those classes. That was really the only reason I did it. I work in private wealth management and technology. So I definitely could have done finance or IT management, since I kind of work in both of those fields at Baird. But those classes are more fun to me, so that might not be the most traditional approach, but I enjoyed those. It's like only 3 extra classes, not extra, but you take 3 classes that are specific to your emphasis, not just the general MBA program. So that was great. And then just to mention, I am even though I only had 2 years of work experience before starting the MBA, I'm really glad that I did have those 2 years of experience, because I don't think it would have made sense without having some work experience. And just thinking about all the conversations and case studies and things we would do in class, all the students were constantly referencing examples from their jobs, from their companies where they worked. And so unlike a lot of those other degrees from when we were with the main group before this, like med school or law school or whatever, obviously it's best to probably jump right into those programs after undergrad. But I think there is value in waiting, or at least, working while you do it, rather than doing an MBA full time right after undergrad. I probably wouldn't recommend personally. I don't know if you would say anything different, Morgan, but.
Great, thanks, Kelley.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Brad.
So I was just going to say that I think, I understand now how we even bookend even more, because I went full time when I did my MBA and you were working full time. So we had different experiences, but that is great. And did you ever take the GMAT, Kelley, to do your MBA program?
Yeah, good question. So I didn't, because I had taken the GRE, because I was actually already admitted and enrolled in that Spanish master's program when I switched gears. And it was actually in the summer, just before that fall semester, like maybe even around this time of like July, August, just before the semester starting in September, that I applied and enrolled at Whitewater. So since I had taken a GRE and since I had a business undergrad degree, Whitewater did not require me to take the GMAT. They were okay with those things.
Great. Well, I think that's, again, we bookend, because I took the GMAT, not the GRE. And I suspect, and Morgan, feel free to pipe in on this, but I suspect that most MBA programs, they just want you to have some objective test that shows that you have the mental, intellectual capability to do the work, to do the program. Because there were some challenging things in the MBA program. The economics class and the finance classes particularly jumped out at me. It's interesting, I remember that there was a boot camp offered before my MBA class started, and you could specialize on getting up to speed on Excel and some other software packages that would help you to do the economics and the finance work. And it's like, man, that was really a good investment. It was like $200 extra and 2.5 extra days, but it was like so worthwhile for me anyway. Because once you get in, it's like you get an assignment and you got to crank it out. And if you don't know how to do it, you're behind than you already are. So great. And I guess for anyone who is outside of the English as a primary language, TOEFL becomes important. I don't know what your experience was, Kelley, but in my MBA program at UW-Madison, I'd say about 20% of the class were Asian and not English as their primary language. And so for some of the students, you know, the TOEFL was an important part of the admissions process, but, you know, that's very individual. And I totally agree with you. I went too far, obviously, on the work experience, doing 18 years between my degrees. But I think, you know, a couple of years from what I observed is a good minimum, you know, of work experience. And 2 to 10 years seems to be kind of in the normal range, and I think it would be valuable. But, you know, beyond 10 years, I'm not sure you add any value. And I was 43 when I graduated with my MBA, and I found out that a lot of companies weren't that excited about hiring me, because it's like, well, you're, you know, halfway to retirement, you know, and we want to get 30 years out of you. And I don't think we're going to do that. So definitely doing it a little younger. You know, in my situation, I did it after my wife and I had kids. So my kids were, I think, 12 and 9 when I did the MBA. But I know some of my classmates had babies coming while they were doing the MBA, including one woman who carried the baby. And, you know, that's a whole nother challenge. So I think, you know, figuring out, you know, personal life and where it fits in is important for each individual. And there's any number of ways to do that. Mackenzie, if you want to throw in any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, and hopefully we'll see them. Otherwise, I'm going to go on with kind of the prepared questions and my sense of where we can go. But Morgan, you unmuted, so maybe you have something to throw in.
I'm just going to say, it looks like Mackenzie had asked kind of what she can do with an MBA in the future. So maybe we can kind of talk about that.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. And Brad, it was interesting how you were saying how companies perceived you with your MBA at age 43. Because my mentality was a lot of positions that I had seen at Baird, which is a great company that I plan to stay at. So obviously I came back to Baird after we were in Australia. And there's a lot of not only management positions, but like senior, and if business analytics is a path, senior anything in any department, really. Sometimes on the job description, one of the things that it says is either MBA is preferred or required for a variety of positions. So I thought, well, yeah, it'd be nice to have that just available, even though I didn't know for sure what roles I would want in the future, but just to have that available, which now I am in a management role, which I think my MBA did have an impact on me getting promoted to this position. It was an internal promotion within my current team that I was already on, and I think that was one of the things that set me apart from my teammates and other people that could have that were interested in that role. So I think it just does open some doors. But I specifically specific roles, I'm not sure if I have much to say on that, other than definitely senior leadership roles. It seems very attractive in an application.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I'm glad you said the words open doors, because if I had to summarize my MBA, value, that would be, and I had to pick those words, I would pick those words, because it really did, and it does, from everything I've seen, open doors that you don't even know that you are going to be facing at some point, right? And all of a sudden you're facing a door, and it's like, oh, I wish that door would open. Ah, I got an MBA, it opened. So let's see, Madeline said, I'm definitely looking for a competitive advantage in my future profession. Yep. Good. Well, it's a competitive advantage. And the other thing, while Kelley was talking about some of the finance stuff that you might have done in hindsight, I think one of the things about the MBA is it prepares you and it validates you as a lifelong learner. And so, Kelley, I don't think that's really held you back from what I see. You've gone on and studied on your own for the exams you've taken and pursued avenues in your work career. And I think that's so true of the people that I went to school with in business school. It teaches you, okay, if it's not offered, or if I'm not getting in this class, then I'm going to do it however I do it. And you get the skills and the experience to know, okay, I got to figure this out and I can do it, because I'm smart and I know how to tap resources, right? And that's kind of a thread I would guess across all these graduate programs that are in this session today is, that they're attracting and filtering out people, who have the smarts to pursue advanced education and, have the drive to accomplish those things. So I think that's another thing that the MBA program, even if you don't get it specifically, and there's so many courses that I didn't take as an MBA student, and I suspect Kelley can run off a list too. But at least we know they exist, and if we want to, we can pursue them at a future date. So great. So let's see. One of the questions that Tony provided me with was, how does your graduate school experience differ from your undergraduate school experience in terms of learning and living? Now, we've heard a little bit about very different circumstances for you, Kelley, remotely getting your MBA from Australia and the time difference and all that kind of stuff. But are there other ways that if you hadn't been in Australia doing it remotely, that it still would have been different?
Yeah, that's I saw that question too. I really liked that one because the biggest difference, regardless of where you are, and this happened to me too with those additional exams, the Series 7 and 66. The biggest thing is when you're in your undergrad, all your friends are in undergrad. Everyone you're spending time with is all doing the same thing, having class and homework and studying. But after that, all of your friends are doing different stuff. So if you are continuing your education, you could be the only one in your friend group or family or of coworkers. So that was tough to balance because most of my friends didn't understand this extra time commitment that I always had to account for when post undergrad, when people are just living a working life, it's a lot more flexible, a lot of fun after work, being spontaneous, meeting up, doing things, when I would have to often turn things down to study or work on school. So it felt a little more isolating than undergrad, where, like I said, you're all in the same boat. So and for me too, the other huge difference was that it was online. So maybe actually if I was in like more of an executive style MBA or one that had some classes in person, it wouldn't have felt that way as much because I would have been able to interact with my classmates in person. So that's the biggest difference. Which again, thinking about that question in terms of like med school and law school people, like they wouldn't have that difference as much probably because they're all still probably living at the campus or near the campus and more full time in the program rather than having it. I feel like an MBA is usually an extra on the side.
Kelley, were you in a cohort-based program or was it kind of self-paced?
Yeah, it was self-paced. So it was really, every class was very different. Like there would be someone in the class who it was their first semester and someone in the class who was graduating at the end of that semester. So there wasn't really any consistency of, of having a group kind of going through it together. A cohort would be a very different program or a very different experience, which I think would be really valuable.
Yeah, I agree. I had an online program too, and my cohort was awesome. So we got to kind of talk and discuss, and we were all kind of in the same classes at the same time. There were different electives that we would take at different times, but we had the same kind of core courses at the same time. So you did kind of feel like you had that community still, which was nice.
Yeah. And it wasn't only me who was, not in a different place at Whitewater, because there were a couple people in different countries as well in that program, and just around the country in the US, which I was surprised because for my undergrad at Whitewater, pretty much everyone was from Wisconsin or Illinois. But for the MBA, people were from all over and all different ages too. So I had a few Brads in my classes and everything in between. So.
Hey, one of the other areas that I want to be sure we touch on, we've still got a fair amount of time, but is finances. And I suspect it was fairly different for you, Kelley, than it was for me. I'll just go first, since I did a more traditional in-person full-time MBA. I took 2 years out of my life to do my MBA. And I had a wife and 2 kids who were used to me providing for them and providing insurance, health insurance, and other things for them. So I angled and got a research assistantship at UW-Madison that paid my tuition and it paid for health insurance. And then there was a small cash stipend also as part of that. But I would have done it for free. And, it didn't tell them that, but because getting the tuition remission and insurance was key. So then that really reduced how much I had to suck out of my savings to get by, during those 2 years that I was a student. But I'm guessing, Kelley, that you and Levi were both working, you were doing an online program. It's still a significant financial investment, I imagine. Anyway, talk us through the issues for you and how you worked that out.
Yeah, that is a really great topic. So the timing was funny that I left Baird during the time I did this degree, because they have a tuition reimbursement program for MBAs, and I think a lot of companies do, which is definitely something to keep in mind, Mackenzie. To see wherever you end up working, if they'll pay your way. So that we missed out on that. That would have been nice. But since we were both, working full time, we still had income, and it was just, setting aside money for tuition. And interestingly, another interesting caveat, again, very specific to my situation, in Australia, we had to do our income taxes there. Australia as a country is very generous with education, not like the US at all. Like they don't have student debt problems. Their universities are very accessible to everybody. But so even for us being foreign citizens working in their country, when we did our income taxes and included, our tuition expenses, We got almost all of it back on our tax return, which was mind-blowing. Yeah, we were not expecting that at all. And that would not have been the case in the US. So yeah, that's definitely a caveat of specific, but yeah, so we were very lucky. It worked out financially, but because I should mention, my husband did his MBA too. He actually started his MBA at Temple, based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Temple University. And he ended up transferring to Whitewater partway through his. It seemed like Temple was going to be like a higher quality program somehow. And they offered him a little scholarship money because he had scored really high on the GMAT. But when we were comparing our classes, it wasn't any better quality, and it was double the price per credit. Literally $600 per credit at Whitewater, $1,200 per credit at Temple. So it was a no-brainer. So anyway, we were both paying tuition at the same time, which, yeah, if we had been in the US, we would have had more tuition reimbursement options with our companies. His company's international, and every country's location has a different policy on that, and the Australia office didn't. But it worked out. And it's definitely a commitment, though, to pay for extra education if you don't have assistance from, like that research assistantship you did, or your company helping pay.
Yeah, I think that both of us would probably offer that one could do better than we did individually in managing the financial aspects of it, because it's not completely insignificant. And yet we're both, examples of, we did it because the timing was right and other things, and we made it work, right? And it may not have been as optimal as it could have been, but we made it work. And so I think that's the takeaway for you, Mackenzie, and for you, Morgan, to the extent that you're dealing with people who have to finance their MBA, is that you do what you need to do. And I will use the metaphor that I used with my wife, was that I was taking some of my retirement funds and just transferring how they were invested. They had been invested in a 401k, and I was investing it in me, and my greater earning power and satisfaction for the rest of my career. And looking back now, that's 100% true as to the way to look at it. And I don't regret it for a minute. Morgan, you look like you have to run off somewhere, so bye.
I'm just going to pop into some of the other sessions so I kind of get a feel for what they're talking about before my talk with Tony.
We'll see you in the main room again.
Yes, you will. Thank you.
Yeah, nice meeting you.
You too.
Let's see. Anything you thought of, Kelley, that you want to share with Mackenzie?
Yeah. Speaking of finances, this is kind of a small thing, but one of the questions was just gee, I wish someone had told me this. I was very happy to discover, being in Australia, with the textbooks, I was like, well, I don't want to have physical books shipped here. So I found that on Amazon, and maybe undergrad students these days already know this, but you can rent, you can even rent an ebook, like through your Kindle app or the Amazon, whatever reading app you use. So that is a lot cheaper than, buying a marketing book that you probably won't look at after the class is over. So you can just rent it for the you would literally put in the dates that you want it. So like September 1st to December 20th or whatever for that semester. And then you have it on your iPad or your computer. And I actually preferred having the textbook in that form rather than paper, because then you can Control F to search keywords and find things a lot quicker right in the book. And you can highlight in there, but yeah, like I said, Mackenzie probably already knows that from her current classes, but we did not, well, at Whitewater, our textbooks were free anyway. We got to rent them for free from the bookstore. So paying anything for a book was new to me. Yeah, Control F. Yep, she knows. It's very handy. Yep.
Good.
Yeah.
Another question I have for you, Kelley, is when you were in the MBA program and you have class assignments, were you able to use any of your work situations as examples? And if so, maybe share that with Mackenzie. And also, I'll remind you both that we're recording this for hopefully a wider audience post event.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, that's kind of why I can't really imagine having done my MBA without a couple years of work experience, and also, the job that I was doing during the MBA, because and being an online program, a lot of our discussions were online. Well, that sounded silly. Like not in a, virtual meeting like this speaking, but like on D2L, Whitewater uses like the discussion boards where you're typing out your discussions. So we had a certain thing every week. Each class was a little different. A certain number of posts you had to do, of conversations you had to have with people, and all the threads are public and had to be on specific topics, or public for the whole class to kind of see. And everyone's was specific to what something they had experienced in the past or were currently experiencing at their job. And there were actually even a couple assignments where I ended up sending a survey to my coworkers on a topic. And I think I interviewed a couple senior leaders for like a management class at the company I was working at. So it was just, I was constantly referencing my work experience. And I will say there were always a handful of students that I had as classmates that were had studied accounting in undergrad, and at Whitewater, they kind of do their CPA right away. That their program is kind of set up so that you do accounting and then you stay for a 5th and or 6th year to just do your MBA and get your CPA done during that time. So there were always a couple of students in that program that would, we would cross paths in classes. So I was only a couple years older than them, but that made a lot of difference, because in those discussions, without having the work experience, they often referenced things that happened in classes. So they were still able to draw some experience. But yeah, most of the case studies and questions were, Mackenzie. So at Whitewater, like a lot of my friends, when we started undergrad and they declared their accounting major, they're pretty much committing to a 5-year minimum program rather than 4 years, because they do their MBA immediately, full-time continuing after their undergrad, and then do their CPA exams during that time too. So it's a pretty cool, I think Whitewater really prides itself on that program, actually. I think they might have like graduate the most accountants in the state, the most accountants and teachers.
And Kelley, is that a MBA that those students earn, or is it a master's in accounting?
Yeah, no, they get an MBA with an emphasis in accounting, I think.
Okay. We had something
yeah,
like that at Madison. And I had some classes with some fifth-year accounting students, but they did not get the MBA. They would have had to do more in order to get that. But that's a great program if it is, because I think one of the things that I wanted to make sure that Kelley, that Mackenzie gets is, you know, that an MBA, it opens your eyes to a lot of things. And I don't know all what courses you had, Kelley, but you know, I had one semester of HR, I had one semester of legal, I had one semester of you know, IT and marketing, etc. And during my career, I had a job for 18 months where all of a sudden I was managing a small business, and there weren't people to do all the different disciplines. So I ended up, like, I had a staff of 8, and so I had to manage 8 people, one of whom had an addiction problem, I came to find out. That is really challenging. That is really, and I drew on, you know, the training that I'd had 18 years earlier to help me get through that, you know, and do a good job with it. You know, that's one of the things about the MBA that I wanted to make sure that there was time to say is that, you know, while you focus on a certain area, you know, in your case, international business, in my case, agribusiness and entrepreneurship, but, you know, you do pick up some of those other things as part of the design of the program. And you don't know how it's going to be valuable to you in the future, but probably will.
Yeah, definitely. For me, it was the project management classes that I did not know, that I would be using them now, working in kind of a more IT role. I think back to those couple of project management classes that I had in my MBA all the time. So it's good. I mean, because really you have to do the majority of the credits. Let me think. I think it's only 9 credits, that are specific to the emphasis. So at Whitewater anyway. So it was 27 credits that were the same across the board and covered the gamut of things.
So yours was a non-cohorted MBA program, but did you create or kind of fall in with a few people who were in the same time frame that you were, or no?
Yeah, it's funny because not at all. And I think since it was online fully, that's probably why. Whereas which Whitewater's MBA program does, you can take classes in person. They offer a handful of each class, you know, on like Monday, Wednesday night or things like that, which I probably would have if we were here in the Milwaukee area. I probably would have done a couple like that. And then I can see how you would, form a relationship and then probably say, oh, which one are you going to do next semester? Let's do the same one. But yeah, I didn't overlap with anyone like that.
Except Levi, maybe.
Which, actually we didn't either.
Oh.
Which we did on purpose. We didn't want there to be anything questionable. And it's funny because most of the classes he took at Temple when they transferred over, those were all classes that I hadn't taken yet, and vice versa. So but I think too, another thing, and this was something that Levi was hoping to get out of the MBA, was the networking, of just meeting other influential people in business in your area, or not even, doesn't even matter, especially now after COVID, you could make a connection with someone in Colorado and end up working together or something. So I guess, and that was one of the questions too. Looking back, if I could have done something differently, I probably would have tried to focus on that a little more, of building some of those relationships. I mean, I'm connected on LinkedIn with, you know, a dozen or so people that I worked on projects with and whatever else. But to really, if I had really fostered some more relationships, that would probably come in handy later, of, or even now, like that I am in a management role of, we are hiring on our team, you know, maybe if I had a really great classmate, like, or someone I knew from that, of say, hey, you should apply for this. I think that a lot of people usually do get that out of their MBA.
Yeah. Well, you know, life is full of trade-offs, and you know, some you have control over and some you don't. And as you were talking, I was thinking there was probably at least one or two MBA programs based in Australia that would have been thrilled to have you and Levi do your MBAs with them instead of with Whitewater. But you know, you chose to do it with Whitewater for various reasons, and it's working out. So that was, I guess, the kind of the last thing I was going to throw out there to Mackenzie is that I'm expecting any moment we'll be moved back to the main room. But you know, there are a lot of MBA programs out there, and the pandemic and online learning has finally come of age. You know, where you know anything is possible, and you can be in Timbuktu and do an MBA at Harvard or something, probably. Maybe not Harvard, but but anyway, so do you, Kelley, have any insights into, you know, the value you got from UW-Whitewater was good. It was convenient to you, you know, to do it, or relatively convenient. Do you have any regrets? Do you see now where getting a Temple MBA or a UW-Madison MBA, you know, has different cachet or different value than what you got from Whitewater? And, you know, any advice based on that?
Yeah, that is a great question, because that is something that my husband and I both, like I said, how he went to Temple, which was like the #1 online program at the time, and thinking that would have some sort of leg up over Whitewater. But knowing that we were gonna, after our time in Australia, you know, primarily stay in the Milwaukee area for the foreseeable future. I mean, an MBA from Whitewater holds a good amount of weight here. Like, everyone knows what that school is, you know, what the UW system is. Whereas if we were maybe working in California or something, it would be more valuable to have an MBA from a more recognizable name. I mean, not that there's, I mean, we all know that these UW programs are accredited and whatever else, and just as rigorous as any other, but a company out in Utah might not see it that way. Whereas, yeah, here in Milwaukee, we have felt confidence, and now at Baird, I know probably a dozen other people who have an MBA from Whitewater. So
yeah,
if you're going to be in Wisconsin, I don't think you can go wrong with the UW system MBA. Yeah.
Cool. And there you have it, Mackenzie, is like, get a degree in the UW school of your choice when you're ready, and work for at least 2 years and get your ducks in order. Okay, well, Kelley,
exactly. There we go.
It's been great talking to you, Kelley and Mackenzie, even though it's been a one-way conversation with you, Mackenzie.
We've got to chat. It's good.
And we'll see you in the main room.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Mackenzie. Thanks, Brad.